Shalom, this is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we're set to deliberate the latest, with chief focus on the Gaza Strip, the Lebanon file, as well as the Islamic Republic of Iran and its nuclear aspirations, it's always important to remember how the currently raging war began. 411 days ago, on October 7th of last year, the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates in the Gaza Strip have launched a surprise onslaught on southern Israel, declaring war by perpetrating a massacre, murdering some 1,200 mostly civilians, wounding over 4,800 others, and kidnapping some 250 people, including elderly, men, women, children, and infants. 101 of them remain in Hamas captivity to date. The subsequent day, Iran essentially joined the war when it green-lighted its Iranian proxy in Lebanon, Hezbollah, to launch cross-border attacks into Israel. Since then, Hezbollah has launched over 12,000 munitions towards Israeli territory, and not Hezbollah alone. Additional Iranian proxies from Syria to Iraq to Yemen, including Iran proper, have all launched hundreds, if not thousands, of projectiles towards Israel. And with that, let's now turn to our TV7 editor-at-large, Mr. Amir Oren. Amir, what can you update us with on the latest?
So, Jonathan, Israel has lost its 800 casualty in uniform. Of course, there are many more hundreds of civilian casualties, mostly massacred on October the 7th and later killed by the various projectiles. But a 21-year-old reserve non-commissioned officer has become the 800 casualties, fatality in the Gaza-Lebanon war overnight. And obviously and unfortunately, he is not the last one to die in Israel's defense. Now, the UN Security Council has been debating and voting on various draft resolutions regarding the end of the war in Gaza. But paradoxically enough, there are arguments back and forth regarding the linkage between two parts of this resolution. A ceasefire in order to end hostilities. This is supposed to be one part, and another one, distinct from it, is the release of the hostages. As if I'm telling you, Jonathan, I have a resolution for you. The studio door. Having done this and completely unlinked to it, the door. This is really ridiculous, and obviously Israel and its friends in the UNSC cannot accept this charade. In the north, Amos Hochstein, the American emissary, said that the achievement of some arrangement is within our grasp. This is almost the peace at hand formula, which Kissinger once pronounced regarding Vietnam. But this grasp up to now has not been enough. The newly appointed Minister of Defense, Israel Katz, visited the main base of the IDF Directorate of Intelligence, and he announced that Israel, in the arrangement in Lebanon, will insist on having intelligence, dominance, and freedom of maneuver, along with the freedom to fire at will at any threat following the return of its residents to their homes, out of which they were displaced more than a year ago.
Thank you, Mr. Oren. Well, of course, the remark by Mr. Hochstein about having a deal within grasp, I mean, you know, it's similar to what the outgoing Biden administration said when they were about to reach an outline for a deal for the Gaza Strip, which Hamas rejected. They kept on saying, we're almost there, we're almost there, we're almost there, but, you know, nothing materialized out of it, unfortunately, since it would have brought back some of the hostages who have now remained in Hamas captivity for the past 411 days. But let's turn now to Brigadier General in Reserve, Doron Gavish, the commander of the Israeli Air Force Task Force for Air and Missile Defense. It's good to see you, General. I'd like to immediately ask you about, unfortunately, there is an uptick of casualties from cross border fire by the Iranian proxy Hezbollah from Lebanon into Israel. Casualties on the rise both in northern Israel, civilian casualties at that, as well as in central Israel. What can you tell us about that? And honestly, it's quite peculiar, I would define it as, since the averaging number of projectiles being launched on a daily basis from a average for a better part of the past year of roughly 150 per day. Now it has diminished to roughly 80 per day, which is a significant decrease. What has changed?
Well, Jonathan, I don't think that nothing really changed. We could say in the opposite. The IDF capabilities are being enhanced in the last few months. Also, on the airplanes point of view, the fixed wings and the helicopters, which became the first and the second tier for the defense against UAVs. And more radars that were part of the enhancement of the northern part of Israel. But having said that, when you look at it from a public point of view, we could see some, unfortunately, number of people that were hurt. And this is also statistics. We say again and again and again that the defense is not hermetic. Today we're talking about number of 80% interceptions for the UAVs, and this number is even growing. And we're talking about more than 90% of interceptions of rockets and missiles that are being shot toward Israel. But unfortunately, as I said, statistically, there is still those 10%, and the numbers are being piled up, and we do see some casualties. So in the public eye, there is some feeling that in the last days or few days, something different happened. But this is not the reality, not from the side of the capabilities, as I said, and we don't talk about it, but in the last week, for example, there were 3 missiles coming from Yemen. All the 3 of them were intercepted, or 2 of them were intercepted. One of them was disseminated in the air. And imagine yourself that something like this would hit Israel. And this is 500 kilos of explosives. So those are really large numbers. And up to date, we are 15 out of 15 interceptions, and we hope that it would stay like this. But this is also the reason why we have to continuously behave. I'm talking about the civilians now, to be very carefully listening to what is being issued by the Home Front Command, to go into the shelters and to the secure areas. And unfortunately, again, in the last few events that we had in the center of Israel, most of the vast majority of people that were hurt were out of those areas. And we have quite a good alert in the center of Israel. So the sirens were blowing, but the people decided for some reason, and this is why we have to continuously tell everyone, the war is not ended. We know that it's long. It's frustrating, but they see the success of the defense, but those 10% can be little. So please go to the shelters when the siren is being heard. This is life-saving.
Indeed, of course. 15 out of 15, you said? coming out of Yemen. That's very impressive, to say the least. Let's turn elsewhere in Israel, where we're joined by Brigadier General in Reserve Erik Shafir, formerly an Israel Air Force commander, as well as a fighter pilot. It's good to see you, General. I'd like to immediately ask you also about the Northern Front. We are seeing an increased intensity right now in degrading Hezbollah's terror infrastructure throughout not only southern Lebanon, but also in the Bekaa, in Baalbek, and the Dahya in Beirut and elsewhere, uh, at a time when we also heard Major General Ori Goldin, the commander of Northern Command, coming out and saying that there is a really apparent understanding that Hezbollah is losing control to the point of losing a lot of the munitions that were at its disposal and the tools and capabilities that it had, and it's starting to take effect also in the battlefield. What are we to make out of that?
Well, as we're nearing the twilight of this war, that is probably going to end within a few weeks, at most 2 months. Both sides are using their utmost capabilities to leverage their power during negotiations. The fact that we are seeing salvos of 3 drones at the same time, if you compare it to what is happening in the Ukraine, where the salvos get to about 80 drones of such type concurrently in order to overload the defense system, and taking in the fact that Israeli defense system are probably one of the best per area that there are. So that means that Hezbollah's capabilities to fire has diminished to a great extent, and this is probably their last efforts as a show of force. And even though they're successful in hitting here and there, the numbers are very low, the casualties are very low, and so is the damage. So I think we're all seeing that the fact that Iran had said that they will support Hezbollah in whatever decision they make about ceasefire, that means that they're wrapping up things and cutting losses towards the decisions. And we know that Amos Hochstein is on his way from Beirut to Israel, and we're going to close the deal. One thing that I would like to mention, there were some news about a general from CENTCOM who will be the decision maker if Hezbollah are breaking the ceasefire agreements. And I think this is not good for Israel, because this means that the decision whether Israel can strike Hezbollah or not is not within its own reach. And I would rather have it at the hands of UNIFIL, who are not objective, so that Israel can make the decisions and not abide by somebody who has power and leverage over Israel. So I think this even sounds a little counterproductive to my ears, and I'd like to hear our colleagues' thoughts on that matter.
It's very interesting. I did see some reports, and also, of course, the Pentagon spoke about this at length during the press briefing yesterday on CENTCOM's involvement, which they actually highlighted would be specifically on training the Lebanese armed forces and helping the Lebanese state basically implement UN Security Council Resolution 1701, with Iran's sway still very heavy in Beirut, and of course Hezbollah not overwhelmed from a domestic perspective. If we're talking on a Lebanese file projection, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of confidence right now in the other sects within Lebanon, be they the Maronites or the Christians there, the Sunnis, as well as the Druze, to basically push back on Iran's influence. Mr. Oren, are we in a position to potentially push back on the Americans and say, look, we need more time to deal with this issue?
Who are the Americans? The outgoing Biden administration or the
Well,
incoming Trump administration? But in any
According to the
event,
Logan Act, there is just one administration at the time, right?
but if you stall and you don't give your final and definite answer, you get to January 20th. And we all remember, or at least can read about, the mixed armistice commissions which operated between 1949 and 1967, because the 1948 war left several demilitarized zones which were in dispute. They were neither Syrian or Jordanian nor Israeli, and therefore there were UN officers, some of them Americans. Some of the Americans were in charge of those commissions, but obviously, in addition to their UN bosses, they had their American channels, and they, of course, knew what the American policy is. And the CENTCOM commander, obviously, General Eric Michael Kurilla, is very friendly towards the IDF, but nevertheless, he gets his marching orders from Washington, not even from the Pentagon, but from the White House and the State Department. And therefore, General Shafir is completely right. Israel cannot leave its freedom of maneuver in the hands of a foreign military person who is subordinate to a foreign government. Better for Israel to do what it has to do without some formal understanding in writing, which will shackle it more than allow it to operate.
Indeed. Well, General Gavish, I'd like to hear your take on this as well. Of course, you're currently in uniform, so you need to remain within the framework of what's permitted. But nonetheless, how does the IDF look at the current state of play?
Yeah, but I think that General Shafir is right. This is the position of Israel and should stay like this. It is super important that the U.S. military, with help, would enhance the capabilities of the Lebanese forces, maybe also the French ones, also would monitor what is exactly happening there, because we all understand that we cannot trust the UN. They didn't do their job for 18 years. We don't see a reason why they would do it now. So from this point of view, this is probably part of this agreement that should be there. But as I said, I fully agree with General Shafir. At the end of the day, it should be Israel's decision if we have to, to act for any other reason. Of course, we also have to remember that it is not only about Lebanon soil itself, it's also what is coming from Iran through Syria toward Lebanon and toward the Hezbollah. This line also must be stopped. And we see it continuously working, and this is the effort of the Iranians all along the last few years, and also during the war itself. And Israel is very active in stopping those lines of supply. But at the end of the day, we are dealing with terrorist organizations, so we just can't believe them. If they would do something, it's because they are being pressed, because they understand that this is their own interest now to stop the war. We remember from a philosophical point of view that they talk about Hudna, which is let's stop it for a while and we'll come back. So we have to put all the necessary monitoring systems in order to make sure that this agreement will hold. And at the end of the day, to be able to bring back the Israelis back to their homes in the northern part of Israel. And we have to remember that 60,000 of them are refugees within their own country, still not in the northern part of Israel, which is unfortunately really an area that the economy is not, there is no economical wealth over there, and we have a great challenge, and we would have to rebuild this area. So a lot of efforts that have to be done. It is also Israel's interest to have this agreement, but it must be with the right considerations. Otherwise, we didn't do nothing. And I would also add that we have to remember that the goals of our war were not achieved yet. And this is the state of mind of Israel. This is the state of mind of the IDF. This is why we have to continuously press the Hezbollah, continuously have to diminish their capabilities until the moment that the stop sign or flag would be raised. And we have to remember that we didn't solve the problem in the south part of Israel. The hostages are not back with us. And so we still have a way to go.
Indeed. Well, as many of our viewers know, I know there are a lot of Boeren from South Africa, sister and brethren from there, as well as from Canada, from the Netherlands, and elsewhere. Many farmers watch us. They know that it takes time to cultivate once more the farmlands along the borderline with the state of Israel and with Lebanon, that is, and to really yield, to bring about yield from those various areas. I mean, the losses there are terrible, and it will take time to restart and get those farms up and running again. But General Shafir, we don't have very much time left. Nonetheless, I'd like to ask you the report about Palchin, which we spoke about at length a couple of days ago, in which Israel struck a undeclared nuclear site, basically, which is regarded as a bottleneck. Today, IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi spoke about it. He said that the IAEA didn't know anything about it, but nonetheless, there is the letter of international law, which basically speaks against the targeting of nuclear sites, and this is, of course, in general terms, which he brought forth. What are we to make out of the current state of play? Naturally, the Iranians have plenty of undeclared nuclear sites and are lying about it quite openly.
Well, but let me just start off with saying that as a farmer myself, I fully stand with your understanding that rebuilding an agricultural community and cultivating the land is something that is difficult after you're being uprooted to start off again. But talking about Porchin and others, this is not really a nuclear site, but it is a site where tests are being made at launching ICBMs, ballistic missiles, that is, with a nuclear warhead. That is part and parcel of the chain of production that starts with the more, I would say, famous uranium enrichment program, etc. But in order to deliver it through a missile, you need to put it in a warhead that has to withstand very severe limitations to get fired into space and back into Earth under high pressure, high G, temperature changes, etc., in a safe manner. That is a crucial and difficult actuation of delivery. And if you hit the area or the site where this is taking place, then you're gaining a few years of safety, I would say, that allows some latitude. So I think that, according to the foreign news, If that was hit, that puts us in a safe zone for a length of time to be able to use pressure on Iran to stop its nuclear program or to have it under control in such a manner that they cannot produce a delivery system with their nuclear program. So I think this is a very important event, providing that it is true, in the war against arming Iran or Iran arming itself with a nuclear weapon.
Indeed. Mr. Oren, in 1 minute, if you will, the board of directors is currently taking place, so we will wait, of course, with the outcomes of whether or not they adopt the UN Security Council, or, excuse me, not UN Security Council resolution, but rather the draft resolution brought forth by the E3. One of those paragraphs refers to a request from the Director General to provide a comprehensive report on Iran's undeclared nuclear sites, the various open investigations, and where everything stands, with urgency to, of course, the timeline that would ultimately reach October of 2025 when UN Security Council Resolution 2231, basically the section about snapback sanctions, will expire. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it tells us that in UN bodies and affiliated international organizations, a year is called urgency. So much can happen and will happen over the next couple of months and later into 2025 that I suspect we will meet here several times again before what you described will take place.
Indeed, and we'll follow it very closely, of course. But with that, I'd like to thank General Gavish, General Shafir, as well as Mr. Oren for all of your insights. And I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem, Shalom.
I'm Eran Etzion, former Deputy National Security Advisor here in Israel, a diplomat, a strategist by training. I'm very happy to be at TV7 and offer my interpretation along my esteemed colleagues. The strong point of TV7 is to be a reliable source of authoritative insight in an era of shallow news environment that is very difficult for viewers to trust.